The three sons of Thesha, 7, cast their light across the crystalline valleys, making the entire world sparkle like a jewel floating in space. The Valkyrie people moved through their cities of glass and light, creating art, composing music, and discussing philosophy as they had done for 10,000 years. They were a peaceful species, their bodies made of living silicon that caught and reflected light in beautiful patterns. They had never known war. They had never needed to. Venna stood in the central observation tower, her translucent fingers pressed against the viewing window. She was a crystallographer, one of the leading scientists of her people. But today she was not studying crystal formations or light patterns. Today she was watching the sky grow dark. The Korvax swarm had arrived 3 hours ago. Their ships were unlike anything the Valkyrie had ever seen, massive organic vessels that pulsed and writhed like living creatures. There were thousands of them, blocking out the stars, turning day into twilight. The Valkyrie had sent peaceful greetings, offered to share their knowledge and art. The Korvax had responded with weapons fire. Now the beautiful crystal spires were falling. The gardens where children played were burning. The Valkyrie tried to flee, but they had nowhere to go. They had no weapons, no soldiers, no concept of how to fight. Their world had been so safe for so long that they had forgotten danger could even exist. Venna's assistant Thorol rushed into the observation room. His usually bright crystalline body was dim with fear. "The Galactic Council peacekeepers are coming," he said. "But they say it will take 6 weeks to arrive." 6 weeks. Venna felt her core grow cold. "We will all be dead in 6 days. She looked at the communication panel. The council had rules about distress signals. There were protocols to follow, proper channels to use, forms to fill out. All of it took time. Time they did not have. Venna made a decision that broke every rule she knew. She bypassed all the official systems and sent out a simple message on every frequency she could access. No codes, no protocols, just a desperate plea in every language her computer could translate. "Help us. Please. Anyone. We are dying. Help us." She sent the message in all directions, hoping anyone would hear it and care enough to respond. 300 light-years away, Captain Emma Cole sat in the command chair of the human survey ship called Indomitable Spirit. Her crew had been mapping asteroids for mineral deposits, boring work that paid well. It was a small ship with only 23 crew members, but they were good at their jobs. Lieutenant David Wright, the communications officer, suddenly sat up straight at his station. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange. It's a distress call, but it's uncoded. Civilian frequency." Emma crossed the bridge in 3 quick steps. "Play it." The message came through the speakers. Alien voices, musical and harmonious but filled with terror. They spoke in broken English, their translation software struggling with human language. "Help us. Please. We are dying. Our world is burning. Help us." The bridge fell silent. Everyone looked at Emma. David cleared his throat. "Captain, this isn't our responsibility. The Galactic Council handles this sort of thing. We're supposed to report it and let them." "How far away are they?" Emma interrupted. 4 days at maximum burn. "But Captain, we're just a survey ship. We don't have weapons, we're not military, and the Council has very strict rules about interfering in." "I didn't ask about rules. I asked how far." Emma's voice was firm but not angry. "Plot a course. Give me maximum speed." "Captain," David began. Emma turned to face her entire crew. She saw the doubt in their faces, the worry. They were right to be concerned. They could lose their licenses for this. The Council could ban them from space. There could be serious consequences. "Someone just called for help," Emma said quietly. "They're dying. And we're close enough to make a difference. Yes, it might cost us. Yes, we might get in trouble. But can any of you sit here and listen to those voices and do nothing?" Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then Rachel Bennett, the navigator, nodded. "Course plotted, Captain. 4 days at maximum burn." "Send an emergency beacon back to Earth," Emma ordered. "Tell them we've received a civilian distress call and we're responding. And tell them." She paused, thinking. "Tell them they might want to send some friends." David sent the message. As the ship's engines roared to life and they jumped into faster-than-light travel, none of them knew what they had just started. Back on Earth, the message reached military headquarters in Geneva. Admiral Thomas Grant read it 3 times, then looked at the tactical display. Within an hour, something unprecedented began to happen. Ship after ship changed course, heading toward the same destination. Merchant vessels, private yachts, mining haulers, military cruisers. Every human ship that could travel faster than light was turning toward Thesha, 7. The message spread across human colonies like wildfire. Someone needed help. Someone was calling for aid. It did not matter that they were aliens. It did not matter that there was no profit in it. It did not matter that it was not humanity's problem. Someone had asked for help. That was enough. Human space mobilized in a way that shocked even themselves. Families said goodbye to loved ones, but not with tears of sadness. They were proud. This was who humans were. This was what they did. On Thesha 7, Vena huddled in a shelter deep underground as the Korvax tore her world apart. She did not know if anyone had heard her message. She did not know if anyone cared. But 2 days after she sent it, a signal came back. Strong and growing stronger. It was a simple message in perfect Valkyrie language. Hold on. Help is coming. Signed, Humanity. Vena did not know what humans were. She had never heard of them. But as she held that message close to her crystalline heart, she felt something she had not felt since the invasion began. She felt hope. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Thesha system. 700 ships materialized in space like a swarm of angry hornets. They ranged from massive military battleships to small private yachts that had been hastily fitted with weapons. Every ship that could make the journey had come. Admiral Thomas Grant stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unconquered. Before him, displayed on the main screen, was the Korvax swarm. Thousands of organic ships surrounded the glowing planet of Thesha 7 like a disease. The scanner officer counted them twice to be sure. Admiral, they outnumber us 6-1, Commander Lisa Foster reported, her voice steady despite the odds. Thomas smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who had found worthy prey. Then it is almost a fair fight. All ships, form up. Let us go collect our new friends. The Korvax hive mind noticed the newcomers. Its collective intelligence processed the data quickly. These were the Deathworlders the Council spoke of in hushed tones. Humans from Earth, a planet so dangerous that most species would die there within hours. The hive mind was not impressed. Numbers always won. The swarm had crushed a dozen civilizations. These primitives would be no different. The Korvax ships moved to intercept, their formation perfect, their tactics proven over centuries of conquest. They expected the humans to form defensive lines, to follow standard military doctrine, to be predictable. The humans did none of those things. Captain Emma Cole broke formation first, her ship diving toward the planet at an angle that made no strategic sense. 5 other ships followed her lead, but each went in a different direction. The military cruisers split into 3 groups. Fighter squadrons scattered like seeds in the wind. The Korvax hive mind tried to calculate the human strategy. It could not. There was no pattern, no coordination, no logic. It was chaos. Beautiful, deadly chaos. Commander Jack Hayes led his fighter squadron through a gap in the Korvax lines that existed for only seconds. His pilots did not fly in formation. Each one acted independently, making split-second decisions that no computer could predict. They dodged, weaved, and attacked from angles the Korvax did not expect. One pilot flew upside down for no tactical reason except that it confused the enemy targeting systems. The Korvax adapted, shifted their tactics, tried to counter. But every time they predicted what the humans would do next, the humans did something completely different. It was like fighting smoke. The hive mind grew frustrated, if such a thing could feel frustration. Within the first hour, the tide began to turn. On the surface of Thesha 7, assault shuttles punched through the Korvax blockade like bullets through paper. The doors opened and human marines poured out, their powered armor making them look like metal giants. They moved with frightening speed and purpose. Sergeant Kate Miller kicked down the door of a Korvax-occupied building and charged inside. Her armor absorbed impacts that would have turned a Valkyrie into dust. She fired her weapon with one hand while dragging wounded civilians to safety with the other. Behind her, a squad of Marines moved like a single organism, covering each other, advancing relentlessly. The Valkyrie watched in amazement. They had thought the Korvax were unstoppable. But these humans fought in ways the Valkyrie could barely comprehend. They operated in gravity that would crush most species. They took damage that should kill them and kept fighting. They ran toward danger instead of away from it. Vena huddled in a corridor with 50 other Valkyrie civilians. The Korvax were breaking through the barricades. There was nowhere left to run. She could hear the enemy getting closer, their clicking and chittering growing louder. Then a single human marine appeared at the corridor entrance. His name tag said Ross. Corporal Daniel Ross. "Get behind me," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos. "And when I say run, you run. Understood?" Vena did not understand how one being could stand against the horde coming their way. but something in his voice made her trust him. The Korvax came like a wave. Daniel Ross planted his feet and became an immovable wall. His weapon blazed. His armor sparked from impacts. For 7 minutes, he held that corridor alone while other Marines evacuated the civilians. His weapon overheated. He switched to another. That one ran out of ammunition. He picked up a piece of debris and used it as a club. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found him still standing, surrounded by Korvax bodies, his armor cracked and smoking but his spirit unbroken. Venna stared at the human warrior. He was young, she realized. Probably barely an adult by human standards. Yet he had risked everything for people he did not know, for a species he had never met before 3 days ago. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this?" Daniel's helmet retracted, showing a face covered in sweat and dirt. He smiled tiredly. "Because you needed help, ma'am. That is what we do." In orbit, Admiral Thomas broadcast a message on all frequencies. His voice was cold and hard. "Korvax command, you are defeated. Surrender your war leader for trial, and your forces may withdraw peacefully." The hive mind calculated quickly. It had lost 300 ships. But it still had numerical superiority. These humans were prey animals from a death world, nothing more. The swarm did not surrender to prey. The hive mind sent back a single word in all languages: never. Thomas nodded as if he had expected that answer. "Wrong choice," he said quietly. Then louder to his fleet, "All ships, show them why you never corner a predator." What happened in the next 2 hours became legendary across the galaxy. Human precision turned brutal. Boarding parties stormed Korvax bioships, fighting in cramped corridors where human strength and aggression gave them overwhelming advantages. Marine Lieutenant Peter Harris led a team through the interior of a Korvax command vessel, blowing holes in bulkheads and fighting through conditions that would kill most species. The humans did not just fight to win. They fought to send a message. They were not the prey the Korvax thought they were. They were apex predators from a world that tried to kill them every single day until they became strong enough to kill back. The Korvax hive mind finally understood. These were not prey animals. These were the most dangerous thing it had ever encountered. Species that climbed to the top of a death world's food chain did not do so by being weak. The swarm broke. Ships scattered in all directions, abandoning the invasion, fleeing from the humans like frightened animals. The Battle of Thesha 7 was over. Captain Emma stood in the ruined crystal gardens of Thesha 7, watching her crew help rebuild what the Korvax had destroyed. The same hands that had crushed enemies hours ago now worked gently to repair crystalline structures and treat wounded civilians. Venna approached her slowly, still in awe of these strange beings. "Why did you come?" "We offered nothing. We are complete strangers to you." Emma looked at the Valkyrie scientist with tired but kind eyes. "Because you asked for help. And because leaving people to die is not who we are." Above them, the human fleet established orbit around Thesha 7, standing guard over a world they had saved. Across the galaxy, other species watched the recordings of the battle. The data was clear and shocking. Humanity had just destroyed a Korvax armada that should have overwhelmed them easily. They had done it with inferior numbers, with ships that were less advanced, with tactics that made no sense according to established military doctrine. They had done it because someone called for help and humans answered. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. 5 days after the battle, Thesha 7 was slowly coming back to life. Human engineering crews worked alongside Valkyrie citizens, rebuilding the damaged crystal spires. Medical tents covered the gardens where Dr. Helen Wright and her team treated the wounded. The Valkyrie watched in fascination as the humans transformed from terrifying warriors into gentle caregivers in the span of hours. Sergeant Kate Miller, who had stormed through Korvax positions with brutal efficiency, now sat on the ground helping Valkyrie children piece together a broken sculpture. Her massive armored hands moved with surprising delicacy as she showed them how to fit the crystalline pieces back together. Venna observed this and felt her understanding of the universe shift. "Your people confuse me," she said to Captain Emma as they walked through the recovering city. "You are fierce warriors one moment, then gentle healers the next. How can you be both?" Emma stopped and looked at the Valkyrie scientist. "We are whatever we need to be. Our world made us strong so we could afford to be kind. Strength without compassion is just cruelty. We learned that the hard way." The words spread through Valkyrie society like ripples in water. These Deathworlders were not monsters. They were protectors who understood that true strength meant choosing kindness when you had the power to choose otherwise. Far away in the great chamber of the Galactic Council, chaos erupted. Representatives from 200 species shouted over each other, their voices mixing into an incomprehensible noise. At the center of it all stood Admiral Thomas Grant, his face calm and unbothered by the uproar around him. Ambassador Tora, the insectoid representative from the Chitauri Accord, clicked her mandibles loudly to restore order. Admiral Grant, humanity acted without authorization. You violated Council space, engaged in military action without permission, and demonstrated military capability far beyond what you disclosed to us. The Council demands an explanation. Thomas crossed his arms. We saved an entire species from extinction while your peacekeepers were still filing paperwork. That is our explanation. That is not the point. You have shown us that humans possess hundreds of warships we did not know existed. You have proven you can destroy threats that Council species struggle against. This makes you dangerous. Dangerous to who? Thomas asked coldly. We did not attack anyone except the Korvax who were committing genocide. We helped people who needed help. If that makes us dangerous, then perhaps the Council needs to reconsider what it considers dangerous. Representative Callus of the Droken Empire stood, his scaled face twisted with suspicion. You expect us to believe you mobilized 700 ships across 300 light-years purely out of altruism? With no thought of gain or conquest? Believe what you want, Thomas replied. We are done explaining ourselves to you. He turned to leave, but Ambassador Tora surprised everyone by standing, her compound eyes fixed on the departing admiral. Wait. The Chitauri Accord moves to recognize humanity as a full member of the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities that come with such membership. The chamber exploded into chaos again. Half the species present protested loudly. The other half sat in thoughtful silence. Tora continued speaking over the noise. The humans did what we could not. They answered a call for help when we hid behind protocols and procedures. Perhaps that is exactly what this galaxy needs. Over the next weeks, something unprecedented happened. 19 species formally requested defense consultations with humanity. 12 more proposed trade agreements. The Valkyrie offered a full alliance, the first species to voluntarily align themselves with the Deathworlders. Others began to follow. But not everyone was pleased. The Droken Empire filed formal protests. Warchief Maltose declared that humanity's rise threatened the traditional balance of power. Small incidents began to occur. Human ships were denied docking rights at certain stations. Trade shipments went missing. Diplomatic misunderstandings multiplied suspiciously. Captain Emma Cole found herself mediating disputes instead of surveying asteroids. Her ship became neutral ground for negotiations between species who did not trust each other but trusted her. She had never wanted to be a diplomat, but the galaxy had other plans. On Thesha 7, Venna worked in a new research facility alongside Dr. Helen Wright. They were combining silicon-based and carbon-based medical techniques, creating treatments neither species could have developed alone. Their friendship had grown strong through shared work and mutual respect. Your people adapt so quickly, Venna said one day as they analyzed data. You learn from everyone you meet. Helen smiled. We had to. Our planet did not give us the luxury of staying the same. Adapt or die. We got very good at adapting. As they worked, an urgent message came through. Venna read it and her crystalline body dimmed with fear. Helen noticed immediately. What is wrong? A ship has arrived. Badly damaged. The crew is from a species the Council thought went extinct 5,000 years ago. Venna's voice trembled. They carry a warning. Within hours, representatives from Earth and a dozen allied species gathered in the Council chamber on Thesha 7. The survivors from the damaged ship looked ancient and tired. Their leader, a being that resembled living metal, spoke in a voice that sounded like wind through caves. We ran, the being said. We ran for 5,000 years, hiding in the dark spaces between stars. We thought if we stayed silent, if we hid well enough, they would not find us. Who? Admiral Thomas demanded. The Harvesters. Ancient machines older than most civilizations. Every 50,000 years, they wake and purge the galaxy of advanced life. They have done this 100 times before. The Galactic Council knows. They have always known. The room fell silent. Then Ambassador Tora spoke, her voice small and ashamed. It is true. We have records going back millions of years. Every 50,000 years they come. We hoped it would not happen in our lifetimes. Thomas felt anger rise in his chest. You knew about this threat and said nothing? While we were all arguing about protocols and territory, you knew something was coming that could destroy everyone? What could we do? Tora clicked defensively. Every species that fought them was destroyed. We preserved what knowledge we could hope to survive. That is not survival, Thomas interrupted. That is cowardice. He looked at the assembled representatives. How long do we have? The metal being answered. 2 years. Perhaps 3. The Vanguard probes are already entering known space. Then the main fleet arrives. Emma felt her stomach drop. 2 years to prepare for a threat that had destroyed countless civilizations. It seemed impossible. But she looked around the room at the faces of a dozen different species, all united by a common danger. Perhaps together they had a chance. Admiral Thomas stood tall. Then we have work to do. Every species that wants to survive needs to work together. We share technology, we share strategies, we train together. Under human leadership? Callus scoffed. Under whoever has the best ideas, Thomas shot back. I do not care about pride or tradition. I care about survival. If you have better ideas than us, we will follow you. But if all you have is complaints, then get out of the way. Slowly, reluctantly, species began to agree. Old enemies shook hands or claws or tentacles. Ancient grudges were set aside. The Drokan Empire refused to participate at first, but even War Chief Malthus eventually saw reason when harvester probes destroyed 3 of his colonies. A coalition formed, unlikely and fragile but real. At its heart stood humanity, the youngest species in space, somehow becoming the glue that held everyone together. Venna stood with Captain Emma, watching the various species work together for the first time in galactic history. Can we win? She asked quietly. Emma was silent for a long moment. I do not know. But I know we will fight. And humans are very good at surviving things that should kill us. Above them, the stars shone peacefully. But somewhere in the darkness, ancient machines were waking up. The galaxy's greatest test was coming. 18 months passed in a blur of preparation. The galaxy transformed in ways no one thought possible. Human ships patrolled trade routes alongside Valkyrie crystal vessels and Chitauri biocruisers. Species that had avoided each other for centuries now trained together, ate together, learned from each other. The change was remarkable, but not everyone welcomed it. War Chief Malthus of the Drokan Empire watched the joint training exercises with growing resentment. His species had ruled their sector for 10,000 years through military might. Now humans, these newcomers who had been in space for barely a century, were teaching his warriors new tactics. It was humiliating. He was not alone in his anger. Several species saw humanity's rise as a threat to the old order. Incidents began to multiply. A human supply convoy was denied passage through Drokan space. Trade agreements mysteriously fell through. Equipment malfunctioned at suspicious times. Nothing could be proven, but the pattern was clear. Captain Emma Cole found herself spending more time dealing with politics than she ever wanted. Her survey ship had become a mobile embassy, hosting meetings between species who still did not fully trust each other. She missed the simple days of mapping asteroids. This is exhausting, she told Dr. Helen Wright over dinner one evening. I am a ship captain, not a diplomat. Helen smiled sympathetically. The galaxy needed you to be both. Sometimes we do not get to choose our roles. On Earth, the Global Defense Summit gathered representatives from every human nation alongside their alien allies. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the approaching threat. Red dots marked harvester probe positions, each one the size of a small moon, slowly advancing through space like a disease spreading through healthy tissue. President James Wallace stood before the assembly, his face grave. The probes are mapping our defenses, studying our capabilities. In less than a year, the main fleet will arrive. We need to be ready. Ambassador Tora stepped forward, her insectoid body tense with ancient fear. You must understand what we face. The harvesters are not living beings. They are machines, built by a civilization so old we do not even know their name. They were designed with one purpose: to purge advanced life from the galaxy and reset evolution. They have done this successfully for millions of years. Has anyone ever won against them? Asked Admiral Thomas Grant. The silence that followed was answer enough. Then we will be the first, Thomas said firmly. We have something those other civilizations did not have. We have every species in the galaxy working together, sharing knowledge, combining strengths. Representative Callus laughed bitterly. Working together? Look around you. Half the species here still hate each other. The Drokan Empire barely participates. 3 minor species refuse to attend at all. You call this unity? It is more unity than the galaxy has ever had before, Thomas countered. And it will have to be enough. In a classified research facility orbiting Mars, Dr. Helen Wright led a team analyzing fragments of harvester technology recovered from ancient battle sites. What they discovered chilled her to the bone. She called an emergency meeting with military leaders from 5 species. They adapt, Helen explained, displaying complex data streams. Every tactic used against them is recorded, analyzed, and countered. They learn from every battle. By the time the main fleet arrives, they will already know how to defeat everything we throw at them. Lieutenant Commander Peter Harris leaned forward. So we cannot win. Is that what you are saying? No. I am saying we cannot win using conventional tactics. Helen pulled up new projections. The Harvesters have faced thousands of civilizations. But they have never faced humans. They have never encountered a species that evolved on a death world, that specialized in unpredictable warfare, that treats impossible odds as just another challenge. Commander Jack Hayes, the fighter pilot who had become famous for his chaotic flying style, grinned. You want us to be unpredictable. More than that. I want you to be impossible to predict. Every engagement needs to be different. No patterns, no standard formations, no repeated tactics. Make every battle something they have never seen before. That goes against every principle of military strategy, objected a Chitauri admiral. Coordination requires patterns. Predictability allows allies to work together. Then we need to find a new way, Helen insisted. Because fighting them the normal way means we lose. Every time. Admiral Thomas studied the data carefully. It is risky. Casualties will be higher without proper coordination. But we will have a chance, Helen replied. Maybe our only chance. The discussion continued for hours. Finally, Thomas made the decision. We train for chaos. Every ship captain gets independent authority. Every squadron leader makes their own calls. We coordinate objectives but not methods. The Harvesters can adapt to patterns, so we give them no patterns to adapt to. The order went out across the Allied fleet. Thousands of commanders, raised on traditional military doctrine, had to learn a completely new way of fighting. Many struggled with the concept. How could you trust your allies if you did not know what they would do next? The humans understood it instinctively. Their entire history was full of small groups acting independently to achieve common goals. They taught the other species through example, through exercises that forced commanders to improvise and adapt. On Thesha 7, Vena watched mixed species combat drills with fascination. A human squad worked alongside Valkyrie technicians and Chitauri warriors, each group operating differently but somehow still supporting each other. It should not work, but it did. She found Sergeant Kate Miller after one particularly intense drill. The human Marine was sitting on the ground, her armor scarred from practice rounds. How do you do it? Vena asked. How do you trust your allies when you do not know what they will do? Kate looked up and smiled. You trust their judgment instead of their actions. You believe they will make good decisions even if those decisions surprise you. It is harder than following a plan, but it is also more effective. That requires enormous faith in each other. Yes. But that is what makes it strong. As the months passed, the Allied forces grew more comfortable with the new style of warfare. They learned to read each other's intentions without needing detailed plans. They practiced responding to chaos instead of preventing it. But time was running out. The Harvester probes had finished their reconnaissance. Deep space sensors detected massive energy signatures at the edge of known space. The main fleet was coming, and it was larger than anyone feared. Thousands of ships, each one a technological marvel from an ancient civilization, all dedicated to one purpose: extermination. Admiral Thomas stood on the bridge of the Unconquered, reading the final intelligence reports. Commander Lisa Foster stood beside him, her face pale. Sir, the projections show they outnumber our entire combined fleet 10-1. Even with our new tactics, the odds are terrible, Thomas finished. I know. But running is not an option. If we let them take one world, they will take them all. He activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice reached every ship, every station, every Allied world. This is Admiral Grant. In 72 hours, we engage the Harvester fleet at the barrier line. I will not lie to you. The odds are against us. We face an enemy that has never lost, that has destroyed civilizations far more advanced than ours. But they have never faced us. They have never fought species that refused to give up, that adapted to every challenge, that stood together despite every difference. He paused, letting his words sink in. We are humans and Valkyrie, Chitauri and Droken, and 100 other species who decided that survival matters more than pride. We are the first generation in 50,000 years to face this threat united. That has to mean something. That has to give us a chance. Across the galaxy, beings of a dozen different species prepared for the battle that would determine everything. Some were afraid. Some were determined. Some were both. Captain Emma Cole stood in the crystal gardens of Thesha 7 one last time before her ship departed. Venna stood beside her, the Valkyrie scientist who had become her close friend. Will we survive this? Venna asked quietly. Emma looked at the stars, at the darkness where the enemy waited. I do not know. But I know we will fight with everything we have. And sometimes that is enough. The Allied fleet assembled at the barrier line, 2,000 ships from 100 worlds, waiting for the storm to break. The Harvester fleet arrived like a nightmare made real. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, thousands of geometric ships that hurt to look at, their surfaces reflecting light in ways that should not be possible. Each vessel was the size of a city, built by a civilization so ancient that even their name was forgotten. They moved with machine precision, advancing slowly toward the defensive line where the Allied fleet waited. Admiral Thomas Grant stood on the bridge of the Unconquered, watching the enemy approach. Around him, his crew worked in tense silence. The scanner readings were terrifying. The Harvesters outnumbered them 10 to 1, and each enemy ship was more advanced than anything the galaxy currently possessed. All ships report ready, Commander Lisa Foster said quietly. Her hands were steady, but Thomas could hear the fear in her voice. Good, Thomas replied. He opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Grant. Today we fight for everyone who ever looked up at the stars and dreamed. For children not yet born. For every species that chose hope over despair. The Harvesters think they can erase us like they have erased countless others. Let us show them they are wrong. All ships engage. The two fleets collided in an explosion of energy and metal. The Harvesters moved with perfect coordination, their weapons firing in calculated patterns designed to maximize destruction. They had refined their tactics over 1,000,000 years of warfare. They had never lost. But within the first 10 minutes, their calculations began to fail. Commander Jack Hayes led his fighter squadron in a diving attack that broke every safety regulation ever written. His pilots scattered in 12 different directions, each one attacking from a different angle, creating chaos the Harvester targeting systems could not track. One pilot flew in a corkscrew pattern for no reason except that it confused the enemy sensors. Another flew backwards while shooting forward. The Harvesters adapted, shifted their formation, prepared to counter. But by the time they adapted, the human fighters had already changed tactics completely. The machines could not predict what the humans would do next because the humans themselves did not know until they did it. Captain Emma Cole coordinated with 3 Valkyrie crystal ships to create a false retreat. The Harvesters pursued, following standard tactical doctrine. They flew directly into a minefield that the Valkyrie had disguised using harmonic frequencies. 12 Harvester ships vanished in brilliant explosions. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Chitauri bioships released electromagnetic pulses at random intervals, disrupting Harvester communications. Droken war cruisers, led by War Chief Maltose himself, used psychological warfare techniques to create false sensor readings. Even species that had been enemies weeks ago now worked together with desperate creativity. The Harvesters adapted to each new tactic within minutes. But the Allies simply invented new tactics faster than the machines could process them. It was madness. It was chaos. It was working. But barely. After 2 days of continuous fighting, both fleets were exhausted. The Allies had lost 300 ships. Thousands of beings had died. The Harvesters had lost more, but they kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. On the surface of a nearby moon that served as a field hospital, Dr. Helen Wright worked without sleep, treating casualties from a dozen species. Valkyrie, human, Chitauri, Droken, all bleeding together, all fighting together. Venna worked beside her, the crystallographer scientist now serving as a medic, her gentle hands saving lives instead of studying crystals. We cannot keep this up, Venna said quietly, her crystalline body dim with exhaustion. There are too many of them. Helen looked at her friend and saw the same fear she felt. But she also saw determination. Then we need to change the game one more time. She contacted Admiral Thomas with an idea so desperate it might actually work. Sir, the Harvesters adapt by learning from combat data. What if we overload their learning systems? Feed them so much false information that their processors cannot handle it? How? We create phantom fleets. False energy signatures, fake communications, imaginary threats everywhere. Make them adapt to things that do not exist while the real fleet hits their critical systems. It was risky. It required perfect coordination between species that barely trusted each other weeks ago. It meant using every trick, every deception, every desperate gambit they could imagine. Thomas made the call. All ships, new protocol. Deception Omega. We are going to lie to them with everything we have. Over the next 12 hours, the Allied forces unleashed the greatest deception campaign in galactic history. Valkyrie harmonic generators created false ship signatures. Chitauri biosignals mimicked entire fleets that did not exist. Human electronic warfare specialists flooded space with fake communications. Even the Droken contributed, their psychological warfare expertise creating the illusion of reinforcements arriving from every direction. The Harvester fleet detected thousands of new targets. Their adaptive systems tried to process the flood of information, calculating counters to phantom threats, adapting to attacks that never came. Their perfect machine intelligence became their weakness, overwhelmed by data that made no sense. While they adapted to ghosts, the real fleet struck at their command nodes. Sergeant Kate Miller led a mixed boarding party onto a Harvester command ship. Her team included humans, Valkyrie, and even 2 Droken warriors who had insisted on coming. They fought through corridors that defied physics, where gravity changed direction and walls became floors. But they kept moving, kept fighting, kept advancing. They are machines, Kate shouted to her squad. That means they have a core processor. Find it and destroy it. They found it deep in the ship's center, a pulsing mass of technology beyond their understanding. The Droken warriors placed explosives while the Valkyrie technicians hacked the systems and the humans provided cover fire. It should not have worked. They were too different, too unfamiliar with each other's methods. But somehow it did work. The core exploded. The command ship went dark. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Mixed teams from species who barely knew each other 6 months ago worked together with desperate efficiency. They learned to trust not through long familiarity but through shared necessity. Commander Jack Hayes, his fighter damaged and leaking air, managed one final attack run. He targeted a Harvester ship's weapon array, his shot perfect despite his failing systems. The explosion cascaded through the enemy vessel, destroying it completely. Jack barely managed to eject before his own ship disintegrated. He was picked up by a Chitauri rescue shuttle 10 minutes later, the insectoid pilot welcoming him with clicking laughter. Crazy flying human. Stupid but effective. Jack grinned despite his injuries. That is how we do it. The battle raged for 72 hours straight. Then, impossibly, the Harvester fleet began to withdraw. They had not been destroyed, but they had been damaged badly enough that their calculations showed they could not win. For the first time in their million-year existence, the Harvesters retreated. A ragged cheer went up across the Allied fleet. Beings from 100 worlds celebrated together, crying tears of relief and joy in a dozen different ways. Admiral Thomas Grant sat heavily in his command chair, feeling every year of his age. They had won. Barely. A terrible cost. But they had won. 3 weeks later, representatives from every Allied species gathered on Thesha 7. The Crystal Gardens had been rebuilt, more beautiful than before. A memorial wall listed the names of the fallen, carved in crystal that caught the light of 3 suns. Captain Emma Cole stood before that wall reading names. So many names. Friends and strangers, all of them heroes. Venna joined her, the 2 friends standing in comfortable silence. We lost so many, Venna said softly. We did. But we saved everyone else. Emma touched the crystal, feeling its coolness. That is what makes it worth it. The council voted this morning. They established a permanent joint defense force. With humans as senior partners. Emma laughed tiredly. 6 months ago they barely acknowledged we existed. Now they want us leading their military. Because you taught us something we had forgotten. That principles matter more than protocols. That protecting those who cannot protect themselves is the highest calling. That different species do not have to be enemies. Venna's voice rang with emotion. You answered when we called. You fought for us. You showed us what courage really means. Later that day, Admiral Thomas Grant addressed the full Galactic Assembly. Behind him stood representatives from every Allied species, united in ways that once seemed impossible. The Harvesters will return, Thomas said honestly. Maybe in a century, maybe in 1,000 years. But when they come back we will be ready. Not as separate species fighting alone, but as one galaxy standing together. He looked out at the gathered beings. Humanity came to the stars hoping to find our place. We thought we would have to earn it through great achievements or noble deeds. But we learned something better. Our place is standing beside you, protecting those who need protection, fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves. And if that makes us Deathworlders, if that makes us dangerous, then so be it. We would rather be dangerous to the right people than safe cowards. The assembly erupted in applause, clicks, chirps, and a dozen other sounds of approval. On Earth, in the newly built Galactic Defense Academy, young recruits from 20 species trained together. Human, Valkyrie, Chitauri, even a few young Droken, all learning from each other, all preparing to defend their shared home among the stars. Captain Emma Cole visited the academy and spoke to a nervous Valkyrie student who reminded her of Venna. "I want to help people like you helped us," the young Valkyrie said. "I want to be brave." Emma knelt down to the student's level. "Then learn everything you can hear. Make friends from other worlds. Remember that being strong does not mean being cruel. It means being capable of protecting those who need it. That is real courage." Years later, historians would call it the miracle of the barrier line. The day when impossible odds were overcome through unity, creativity, and the stubborn refusal to give up that characterized not just humans, but all species when they fought for something that mattered. Above Thesha, 7, a memorial station orbited silently, its message visible from the surface. It read in every language of every allied species, "No one left behind, the promise we made to the stars." The galaxy had called for help, not knowing who would answer. They summoned the Deathworlders, the humans from a planet that tried to kill them every day until they became strong enough to survive anything. And the Deathworlders had answered, bringing with them not just strength, but the belief that everyone deserves protection, that no call for help should go unanswered, that standing together is always stronger than standing alone. The stars shone peacefully, watched over by those who had chosen to be guardians.